Hi, this is Rhonda, and today we're going to make an apple pie from scratch. Apple pie is my favorite pie, and I hope it's one of yours. The first thing we're going to do is start with the crust. Okay, so it calls for 2 cups of flour. When you're measuring flour, you must level it off. 1. 2. And then it calls for a teaspoon of salt, and I'm just going to use a dash of salt because I don't really like a lot of salt in my crust. I'm just going to do a dash of salt. And then 2/3 cup lard. I'm just going to move this aside for a second so I can show you how to measure lard. Measuring lard's a little tricky, so here's my 2/3 cup. 2/3 cup. And I like to use a metal spoon when measuring out lard. And you have to put it in, and then I just use the spoon to push it down because you want an air bubble underneath it. It's kind of mushy. So, push it down. Sorry about the dogs in the background. Somebody's driving down the road, and sometimes they get excited about it. Okay, so I'm just pushing this down. Using the spoon to push it down. Okay. Flatten that off, make sure it's kind of level. Okay, so there it is. And I'm going to set this aside for a second. And then it calls for 2 tablespoons of butter, which I pre-measured out. And I wanted to show you that on the butter, it shows you the 1, 2 tablespoons. So I just took a knife and I cut that earlier. I want it to start softening up because it'd be easier to work the dough when it's softer. When the butter's softer, the lard's a little bit softer. The lard's been chilled, but it's a little bit soft. It'll make it easier to blend. Okay. So now the next thing is 4 tablespoons of water. Okay. I have, it's called a measuring glass. So it's a miniature measuring cup. And I'm trying to get to the part where, okay, so I need 4 tablespoons of water. So I measured out the 4 tablespoons of water in my measuring glass. And when I did that, I looked and tried to make sure it was level with the number that it needs to be at. So I'm going to take that, set that aside. And then what I use and what is recommended to use for a pie crust is a pastry blender. So this is a pastry blender. If you do not have one of these, you could use a couple forks, and that works too. But a pastry blender is what I would recommend if you're planning on making a lot of pies. I went looking for one of these at one of the regular the common stores, and I could not find one. So I would recommend either going to a kitchen store or going online and look for a pastry blender. This will make making a pie a lot easier. So how you do this, I'm going to set some of this other stuff aside. I'm going to bring my lard in here and my butter in here. So you start off with doing half the amount of lard. So half of this I'm going to put in my bowl. And half the amount of butter. And I'm going to start blending that up right now. And I always use a wide bottomed bowl so that I can really blend it nicely. And so what we're looking for is we're looking for the consistency of like cornmeal. So in other words, we want all this butter and lard broken up in tiny little pieces. So that's why I keep on moving the bowl around in a circle, makes it easier. And I'll just do the best I can, and then I'll add more, and then I'll even blend it more. So this particular crust has lard and butter. On my YouTube channel, Rhonda Cooking at Home, there is a pecan pie recipe that's a kosher crust with the pecan pie. And if you want to do kosher crust with the apple pie, that's fine. You can watch on the kosher pecan pie recipe how to make the kosher crust. But today I'm just doing the lard butter crust. Okay, so most of the pieces are pretty, I'm going to try to hold this up so you can kind of see. It's kind of like getting pretty blended together. Just going to do a few more times, and then I'm going to add the rest of the lard. Hope everybody's having a good day. The apples at the store looked really, really good. So I decided, you know, it'd probably be a good time to make an apple pie. Apples are in season. And I was able to find some organic apples, which was really, made me really happy from the store. They don't have, when I've gotten apples before for apple cobbler, somebody had given some to my husband, and they were great, and they were super organic because they even had little dents in them and different deformities that I had to go through in my cobbler recipe. I had to do that. But these ones from the store are looking so nice that I'm going to leave the skin on them because I do like the skin of the apples. I'm excited that I actually found some really nice looking apples. Sometimes you just don't know what to make until you go to the store and see what looks good at the store, especially when you're dealing with fruits and vegetables, that's for sure. Sometimes it's hard, but it is apple season right now, so that's good. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to keep on working with this. So this particular crust would either make 2 pies that don't need a lid on them, or 1 pie that does need a lid on it. So, of course, the apple pie will have a top to it. So, at least this recipe does. So, this will be enough. Okay, so we're getting pretty well mixed up. Okay, now I'm going to start adding a little bit of water. A little bit at a time. It's mixing very well. Okay, I'm going to add more water. Okay, I did stop the camera and rolled up my sleeves. I was starting to fight my sleeves. I got all the clumpy jewelry off, but I forgot to roll up my sleeves, and I was tired of pushing them up, so I'm back. Okay, so there's the rest of the water, and it's looking pretty good. So I kind of know when it's done, when it really starts sticking together and almost like releasing from the bowl. It's not sticking anymore to the glass bowl very much. So I know I'm ready to roll it out. Okay, about ready. I'm going to set this aside. Okay, so now I'm going to flour my cutting board. Flour the cutting board, flour the rolling pin. Move the camera back so you can see a little bit better. Okay. Didn't need all that flour. Okay, so now I'm going to grab the crust. I'm going to put it in a ball. So I'm going to have there's some pieces here. I'm going to have a top and a bottom for this. So I'm going to try to guess what half looks like. Half of it will be for the bottom and top, and the other part will be for the top. So I'm just going to set that aside, and I'm just going to work right now on the bottom. And I like to go ahead and have a thin crust on my pies. I'm going to roll this out pretty thin. This direction. Try to make it as even as you can, so you don't have one thick part and one thin part. Sometimes I have to get a little bit more flour. I guess I shouldn't have dumped that back in there quite yet. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, hopefully roll it back without it falling apart. And my aunt gave me this apple pie as the recipe, but it's not this recipe, I don't think, because once you cover it up, how would you see your recipe? So I might have written it down. I might have gotten it somewhere else, I'm not sure. And I'm going to roll this out, and it looks like I might be a tad short. I'm going to take a knife. A serrated knife, and I'm going to do a little bit of trimming here. So I'm going to only have it go to like here because the top part is going to end up meeting it. So take some of this off. It's an awfully deep one too. This one is not. Not coming out exactly how I thought it was going to. I might have to take some of that crust. So if you find yourself in this situation, you might have to take a little piece and flatten it out. Okay. And then I'm going to have to probably take some of here. I miscalculated the size. I'm just going to take some from there, flatten it out. trimming. I'll put some over here. You never know sometimes what you might encounter when you're baking. The trick is at the end, if it comes out good, then you're doing good. Sometimes you miscalculate, especially when you're doing this sort of crust where you have a top and a bottom, how much you were supposed to do for the one side. Maybe I was not even there. So you need to just push it down and make sure that it's even. Cut some of this away. Some of that away. Some of that away. So when I have it come together, it all meets right. So I'm pushing this down. I'm making sure that as best as possible it's even on the bottom and on the sides. You know, that I don't have one big thick piece, because that would not be good. I go around and make sure that there's no air holes. Because if you have an air pocket, it'll come up and pop and kind of explode. What I always do with pie crust is I take a fork and I just ever so slightly, not all the way through, just ever so slightly put some fork marks. And that helps it not bubble up and explode. Okay, so what we're going to have to do with this is set this aside, because we're going to put on a lid on it later. So I'm going to set this aside and then we're going to work on the filling. First thing I'm going to do is rinse off my apples. So I'm going to go ahead and these apples look really, really good. So I'm just going to rinse off the apples and I'm going to keep the skin on. I'm just going to rinse off. And the organic ones typically don't have wax on them, but I still like to just rinse them off just in case they have anything on them at all. And when I opened up this bag, I could smell, well, not even before I opened up the bag actually, I could smell that these are very good apples, because they have a really good smell already, right away. So I bought 2 bags of apples. I'm going to start with the 1 bag of apples and see if I have enough. The last thing I wanted to do is possibly run out of apples, and I love apples, and so does everybody in the family, pretty much. So I figured, you know what, I'm just going to buy 2 bags of apples, and that way if I run short, I can take some out of the other bag and not have to worry. Because you never want to be in the middle of one of these cooking projects and realize you don't have enough ingredients. So the apples are all clean, and I'm ready to cut them up. Okay, so we're going to cut up the apples. So the recipe calls for 5 to 6 cups of apples. So I have this giant measuring cup. So I'm going to try to make it maybe between 5 and 6, since it says 5 to 6. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to cut out the little edge, and there was not much over there, so I'm going to, you can almost see where to go with coring the apple. There's almost like a circular, there's almost like a line. Here, I'm going to show. See what I'm talking about, this line right here? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a paring knife, and I'm going to go around in a circle and pop the core out and set that aside. I should have got a bowl. I'm going to just put it in this here bag. Okay, so I'm just going to do a few of these and then I'll start slicing it, because I know for sure I'm going to need several. So I'm going to do this. And this is, and then on this side. And this is a lot easier than if you got apples off of a tree, only because since they're commercial apples, even though they're organic, there's very little that you have to worry about removing. Okay, so I'm going around in a circle, turning this, popping the core out. Now they have cores, but for me, this is just as fast. Now there is a little imperfection right on this one, so I'm just going to kind of get rid of that imperfection right there. Oops. Apples are flying everywhere. And because the skin's in such great condition, I'm going to keep the skin on. I like the skin. I'm going to keep it on. If you want to remove the skin, that's fine. If you want to use red apples, that's fine. The ones that looked best in the store today were these are Granny Smiths. Granny Smith Organics look the best. So I usually just go with whatever looks the best. I like Granny Smith apples anyway, but these also happen to look the best. Okay, so I have a paring knife, if you're wondering. That's what I'm using. And I have a little bit of debris here, so I'm going to rinse that out for a sec. Take the stem off, take the little side pieces off. And again, I'm running it this way, turning the apple at the same time. Careful not to cut yourself. This method here, I feel like, is sparing the least. There's the least amount of waste. Excuse my dogs in the background. For whatever reason, it's a barky day apparently. Must be a lot of people in the neighborhood or something, because they are wanting to bark. Okay. So in a few minutes, I think we're going to check to see where we're at here. Okay. Oh, apples flying everywhere. The dogs will probably want to eat a piece. Okay. Some of these I need to rinse. So if you have a little bit of debris or something like this, you might want to rinse it off. You have to pay close attention, because all of a sudden I cut it, which looks like a fairly decent apple, and I found that right there. And then I'm looking and there's something right there. So I don't know if it's a worm or what, but I'm going to cut that part out. I don't want to take a chance. I'm going to just remove that. Okay, so now we're to the point where I'm going to be slicing up the apples and putting them in this very large measuring cup. So I went from a paring knife to a knife that's a little bit longer and sharp. So what I'm going to try to do, first of all, I don't know if this is enough, but I have a whole other bag. But I'm going to try to slice these apples so that, and if I happen to see, like this one actually has a little bit of a bruise, so I'm just going to remove that. Is try to slice them so that they end up being very similar in size, so that they cook similar. So you just do your best. It's not going to be perfect. People aren't machines. So we do our best to slice them similar in size. Got to taste an apple and make sure it's good. They're very good. And you want to use a sharp knife, because if you don't use a sharp knife, the act of doing this, you could slip and actually cut yourself. So actually sharper knives are better. And a nice cutting board too. Preheat to 450, bake 10 minutes, then reduce the heat to 350, 35 to 45 minutes. So I'm preheating it to 450, and I'll have to set a timer. So in the meantime, it's heating up. And this was 3 pounds of apples, and I did have to remove a few minor imperfections in the apple, nothing major, so it's very close to 3 pounds. And I'm doing okay on making them even. There are kind of a couple, you know, maybe 1 or 2 pieces not perfect, but close. You don't have to be perfect, just as good as possible to make them even slices. The only thing about apples, like any other fruit, is there's some air holes, and when they cook down, it's gonna shrink. So I think I'll just do, like, this is between, like, it says between 5 and 6 cups of apples, and I'm sitting at almost like 7. I think I'm gonna do 1 more apple and then maybe do something else with the other apples, because I think I might end up with too much otherwise. Because if you look at my pie tin, it's not that much. So I think I'm going to quit right here with that. I'll deal with these other apples with something else. I'll make them into something else. Maybe just some baked. I might just do some baked apples where I just put some stuff on them. Sweeten them up or whatever. So I'm going to put the apples in this saucepan. And on the directions, it doesn't tell you to do this. So, but I think in order to properly get everything blended, this is the best idea. This is what I've come up with over the years, and my daughter's done it this way as well. So I was talking to her about it this morning. What do you think about preheating the apples a little? And her and I decided it'll be better because everything will blend better this way. Okay, so 1/2 to 2/3 cup brown sugar. Okay, so my favorite 2/3 cup I used for lard. So I'm going to use the 1/2, and it says 1/2 to 2/3 cup. So I'm going to do a heaping 1/2 cup. But when measuring brown sugar, you must pack it down, kind of like you did when you were making sand castles in the sandbox. So that's the one. That's pretty much the 1/2 right there. But I was going to probably maybe do 1/2 to 2/3. So I'm just going to do just a tad more. I'm going to break that up. And then it calls for some salt. Just going to put a little tiny bit of salt. And I'm just going to do a little bit of salt. And then 1 to 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. So I'm going to do the 1 tablespoons of cornstarch. With cornstarch, it's going to measure similar to flour. You go like this, and then you can use the lid to level it off. Sprinkle that. So, like I was saying, okay, so that's that. We still have 2 other ingredients here. So a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. That I'm not going to be super exact with. I like a lot of cinnamon. Matter of fact, I'm going to just do another 1/4, a heaping 1/4. Maybe a little bit more. I like a lot of cinnamon. Okay, especially with apples. But I think on the nutmeg, because nutmeg is so strong, we better stick to what they say. 1/8 of a teaspoon. I don't want to go crazy with the nutmeg. And when I mix this together, if I don't think there's enough cinnamon, I'm adding more cinnamon because I love cinnamon. Okay, so what the recipe calls for at this point is you just mix it together and then put it into your pie crust. But I'm just going to heat this up just a little bit, just so that I can really blend it together. So I'm going over to the stove now. Okay, I'm over at the stove now. I'm going to heat this up, and I'll stir it as it warms up a little. Stir it a little bit now. Kind of heat it up a tad. Have things start to. Okay, I'm gonna cover it for just a few minutes so that the moisture can blend things. In a couple minutes. See what's going on here. The brown sugar is starting to melt, and that's kind of what I was going for. Oops. Sorry about that. The lid is making noise. The brown sugar. Everything smells really good. So I'm just gonna mix this up so that I'm getting the brown sugar, the cinnamon, the nutmeg is on all the apple pieces. So you can see that the brown sugar is really like melting in there. And that's what I was after, so that everything really blends. So I feel like it's pretty well blended now, and I can bring this mixture over to the pie crust. I almost have to use your hands a little so that it's even. Okay. I'm going to cut a tablespoon and a half, actually. That makes more sense. Okay. Tablespoon and a half, which is about this much. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm going to take this butter and I'm going to kind of cut it up in little squares. I'm going to start doing it already. And I'm going to put the squares on here. Cut some more squares. So there's my dots of butter. I got to roll out the top part. You're going to want this as round as possible to fit on there. Start rolling. Now some people like to put lace on their apple pie. I've done that before, but today I'm just gonna, I like actually a lot of crust, because I really like crust a lot. So I'm just gonna put a thin layer of crust on top. And it's gonna probably be tricky. I want it thin without it falling apart. Hopefully I can do it on the first try. Don't know if that's going to work out or not. See, it's putting a lid on the apple pie is tricky. If I was going to do lace, I probably wouldn't be as concerned maybe, because I wouldn't have to have as much dough. I'd have this thin enough that it's going to go over the top. But I like it with the full lid. So let's do this and pray that it comes out. And if it doesn't, let's pray that I can repair it. Okay, we are have to do a little repair work, because that happens. I have extra crust over here, thankfully. Okay, where's my knife? Here's my knife. Okay, so what I need to do the proper repairs is a little bit of water. I'm wetting my fingers. I can smooth things out. I did some repair work, and now I'm going to take and put a little hole in the center. I'm going to take the crust out of the center so it can breathe, and then I'm going to take a very sharp knife and put like little cut marks. This way it can breathe and not explode, hopefully. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it doesn't explode. Okay, before I pop this in the oven, my last step is I'm going to take some cinnamon and sugar. So what I've done is I had an old, like a small cinnamon container, and then I put half cinnamon and half sugar in it, and I do that with a lot of different things. So I'm going to put some cinnamon and sugar on here. And I like a lot of cinnamon. You probably figured that out when I added a whole bunch of extra cinnamon. And guess what? The cinnamon and the sugar just covered up some of my imperfections, so that is a plus. So now I am ready to pop this in the oven. I'm ready to pop this in the oven, and this is how it's looking right now. Okay, and throughout the baking process, I will go ahead and let you guys look inside and see how it looks when it's partly done and that sort of thing. For the meantime, I had preheated the oven to 450. I'm going to set an alarm for 10 minutes, and then in 10 minutes I will reduce the heat to 350. I will see you soon. It's been 10 minutes and now I have to reduce the heat to 350. And set a new alarm for, it says bake until done, 35 to 45 minutes. So I am going to set an alarm for, I think, 25 minutes just to play it safe so that I can check. But I want to show you what it looks like after the 10 minutes. See if there's any progress, if we're making any progress. Oh, it's looking, yeah, I think we are making some progress. This looks pretty good. It smells delicious already. And I will check back with you in a few minutes and we'll take another look at it right now. I'm going to actually pull it out slightly so you guys can get a better look at it. Now remember, I put cinnamon and sugar on it, so it's, I kind of have to look and see. Okay, so it's starting to brown, but I don't think it's quite ready yet. The cinnamon and sugar makes it kind of look brown. The apples are boiling a little, but I would say I should check it in 5 minutes. So I'm going to check it in 5 minutes. If it's not done, then I'm going to check it in another 5 minutes. So I will be back shortly. It smells like it's finished. So let's look. Let's see if it's finished. Let's pull it out. Let's see if the crust is browned. It definitely has a very nice brown to it, so I'm going to pull that apple pie. Okay. That looks so good, and it's making the house smell so good. So I want to eat this apple pie warm, maybe almost hot, but just very warm. I don't want to burn my tongue, so I'm just going to have to wait. And it's really hard because the house smells so absolutely delicious. And I will be back with you in a little bit when this apple pie cools off enough to test taste. Hi, I'm back, and it's time to test the apple pie. Okay, I'm going to show it to you, and then I'm going to taste it. I cut some of it off already. My husband's already having a piece. So you can see that the crust is very flaky. But I'm trying to have it focus there. Okay. Very good. Now I'm going to move this out of the way so I don't get pieces falling. Now I'm going to try actual piece. Very, very good. Very flaky. Put in extra cinnamon. Very good. The apples are delicious. The crust is very flaky. All the seasonings are very good, and the house smells great. I'm going to go ahead and put my feet up and enjoy this piece of pie. Looks like it's really good because it actually totally cooled off last night. When I made it, it was warm. So you can see. When I ate it, it was warm. So you can see. I'm going to pick it up because you get a better idea what the crust actually looks like right now. Came out very nice. See the bottom? It's nice and flaky. So I'm really happy with the way it came out. Let's see how it tastes the second day. Didn't last long at my house, that's for sure. I love apple pie. Thank you for watching.